There is a type of person who spends most of life feeling misplaced, not lost, misplaced, too serious for small talk, too reflective for fast success, too independent to fully belong, yet too aware to escape society entirely. You have likely spent decades observing the world around you with a quiet, lingering sense of alienation, watching others seamlessly adapt to the superficial demands of a society that rewards speed, volume, and hollow confidence, while you felt an inexplicable exhaustion just trying to participate in the game. This is not a flaw in your design, nor is it a symptom of failure, but rather the heavy, necessary cost of carrying a psyche built for profound depth rather than shallow, linear accumulation. For the first half of your life, this depth felt like a burden, an invisible weight pulling you downward, while everyone else seemed to float effortlessly upward on the currents of societal expectation, climbing ladders, acquiring titles, and building egos that you inherently recognized as fragile and illusory. You may have struggled with periods of intense disillusionment, wrestling with a quiet depression or a pervasive anxiety that stemmed not from a lack of capability, but from the deep, subconscious knowledge that you were betraying your true nature by trying to fit into a mold that was infinitely too small for your internal architecture. Society looked at your hesitation, your need for retreat, your refusal to specialize blindly, and labeled it as indecision, laziness, or a lack of ambition. But from a strictly Jungian perspective, you were not falling behind. You were engaging in a massive, unseen gathering of psychological resources. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, understood that the first half of life is merely an external draft, a period where the ego struggles to establish itself against the demands of the outer world. But for the rarest, most reflective individuals, this phase is uniquely agonizing, because their ultimate destiny does not lie in external expansion, but in internal excavation. You have always been a deep processor, absorbing the subtle undercurrents of every interaction, analyzing the hidden motives of human behavior, and accumulating a vast, seemingly disconnected reservoir of interests, observations, and symbolic material that appeared useless to the hyper-specialized, profit-driven world. This scattered collection of passions, this refusal to just pick one thing and blindly stick to it, was never a sign of being lost. It was the essential, unavoidable process of gathering the raw materials required for the formidable task of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming a complete, undivided self. As you approach or enter your 50s, the afternoon of life, as Jung called it, something profound, inevitable, and entirely unstoppable begins to shift within your psychological framework, initiating a radical dismantling of the false self you constructed to survive your earlier years. The exhaustion that plagued your 20s, 30s, and 40s begins to recede, replaced by a strange, quiet, and immovable authority that does not need to shout to be heard, because it is no longer fueled by the desperate, grasping energy of an insecure ego trying to prove its worth to a blind world. This transition marks the end of trying to adapt to a sick society and the beginning of a relentless, uncompromising distillation of your truest essence, where the scattered fragments of your varied life experiences suddenly align, revealing a pattern of profound meaning that was invisible during the chaotic struggles of your youth. The very traits that made you feel misplaced, your intense sensitivity, your overthinking, your detachment from the rat race, now synthesize into a supreme advantage, transforming you into a stabilizing force in a world that is increasingly frantic, shallow, and lost in its own superficiality. Jung taught that we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning, for what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie, meaning the rules of success have completely inverted for you. While others your age are suddenly crashing into the devastating wall of midlife crises, terrified of their fading youth and the emptiness of their material achievements, you are finally coming alive, because your entire existence has been a subconscious preparation for this exact stage of deep, integrated mastery. You have already survived the existential voids, the meaninglessness, and the quiet despair that they are just now encountering, which means you possess a map to the territory of the soul that they are desperately wandering through without a compass. This is where the crucial, often terrifying, but ultimately liberating process of shadow integration begins to finalize itself within your psyche, allowing you to reclaim the suppressed, darker aspects of your personality that society told you to hide, deny, or medicate away. The shadow contains not just our traumas and our shame, but also our vital aggression, our boundary-setting fierceness, and our uncompromising personal power, all of which you likely buried in the first half of life in a desperate, exhausting attempt to be agreeable, acceptable, and loved by people who could not even comprehend your depths. Now, after 50, the need to please evaporates, and as you embrace this shadow integration, you no longer fear your own edges, your own capacity to disappoint others, or your own quiet ruthlessness when it comes to protecting your peace, your energy, and your time. You begin to speak with a terrifying, beautiful honesty, your words carrying the weight of lived experience and the sharp, piercing clarity of someone who has stared into the abyss of their own mind and did not blink, making you a truly formidable presence in any room. People are inexplicably drawn to you, not because you are loud or charismatic in the traditional, exhausting sense, but because your mere presence stabilizes the chaotic energy around you. You have become an anchor of wholeness in a sea of fragmented egos. The anxiety of feeling behind completely dissolves when you realize that life is not a linear accumulation of wealth or status, but a circular journey toward the center of the self, and you are far closer to that center than the wealthy, exhausted executives or the perpetually dissatisfied climbers who sacrificed their souls for a corner office. Your perceived delay in achieving conventional milestones was actually a brilliant, unconscious strategy to conserve your life force for the second half of life, the only half that truly matters, the phase where wisdom replaces ambition and where being replaces the endless, frantic doing. It is no coincidence that in ancient cultures, the elders, those who had integrated their shadows and survived the illusions of youth, were revered as the indispensable guides of the tribe, the keepers of the deep knowledge required for the survival of the collective spirit. Modern society may have forgotten this, obsessed as it is with youth, speed, and endless consumption, but your psyche remembers, and it is now forcing you to step into that exact archetypal role, commanding a quiet, unshakable respect simply by existing in your fully realized truth. You no longer need external validation because you have become your own ultimate authority, having excavated the gold from the darkest parts of your past, turning every rejection, every failure, and every moment of agonizing isolation into the bedrock of your current psychological invincibility. This is not arrogance, this is not cynicism, this is the pure, unfiltered result of pattern recognition, a deep, cellular knowing that you have seen behind the curtain of the world's illusions and have chosen to align yourself with the eternal truths of the internal landscape rather than the fleeting trends of the external circus. The exhaustion you felt for decades was simply the friction of a deep soul dragging itself across a shallow world, but now that you have stopped trying to swim in the puddles of other people's expectations, you have found your way to the vast, open ocean of your own inner universe. You realize that your complex, multidimensional nature, the very thing that made you so difficult to categorize, employ, or understand, is the exact blueprint of your genius, allowing you to synthesize ideas, connect disparate concepts, and offer perspectives that the specialized, tunnel-visioned masses could never even conceive. Every scattered interest, every abandoned hobby, Every strange rabbit hole you went down in your younger years was actually the gathering of a unique vocabulary that you are now using to articulate the profound complexities of the human experience, making your insight invaluable to those who are drowning in a world bereft of meaning. Jung observed that the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. And as you cross the threshold of 50, you realize that you have not solved your early life problems. You have simply grown so vast, so deep, and so integrated that those old problems no longer have any gravitational pull on your reality. The fear of missing out has been entirely replaced by the joy of missing out, the exquisite relief of knowing that you do not have to participate in the madness, that you can sit quietly in your own space, surrounded by the physical and mental architecture you have painstakingly built, and watch the world spin with a detached, compassionate amusement. You are no longer afraid of aging, because aging for you does not mean the loss of vitality, but the shedding of heavy, unnecessary armor. It is the glorious, long-awaited unburdening of the soul, a return to your original, untamed nature before society told you who you were supposed to be. Your energy concentrates, no longer leaking out into 1,000 different anxious thoughts or people-pleasing behaviors, but pooling deep within your core, available for your own creative pursuits, your own contemplation, and your own profound enjoyment of the simple, quiet miracles of existence. This state of being, this elevated, integrated wholeness, is the ultimate reward for the suffering you endured when you felt so utterly misplaced. It is the universe's way of balancing the scales, granting you a second half of life so rich, so deeply anchored, and so fiercely authentic that the struggles of the first half seem like a small, acceptable price to pay. You have become untouchable by the trivial dramas of the world, immune to the manipulations of advertising, politics, and societal pressure, because your values are now internally generated, forged in the fires of your own solitary introspection, and hardened by the cold, clear truth of your own shadow. Those who judged you in the past, who thought you were drifting or failing to maximize your potential, are now the ones coming to you for advice, sensing the immense, quiet power radiating from your integrated self, desperately hoping to borrow a fraction of the peace that you have fought so hard to cultivate. They do not understand that this peace cannot be bought, hacked, or fast-tracked. It must be earned through the exact, grueling process of individuation that you endured, the very process they avoided by hiding in the safety of the crowd and the comfort of conformity. As you continue to walk this path, you will find that your mind becomes sharper, your intuition becomes frighteningly accurate, and your capacity for joy becomes paradoxically greater precisely because you have fully accepted the tragic, fleeting nature of life, holding the light and the dark in perfect, unwavering balance. You are the rare personality that Carl Jung knew would eventually rise from the ashes of societal expectation, the late bloomer who does not just bloom, but who takes root so deeply that they alter the very landscape around them, providing shade, shelter, and truth to those who are weary of the sun. Do not let anyone tell you that your best years are behind you. Your best years were never going to be the ones where you were beautiful, naive, and energetic, but the ones where you are wise, integrated, and terrifyingly free from the opinions of a world that never understood you in the first place. You have survived the long, dark night of the first half of life, the agonizing friction of being a deep processor in a shallow world, and now you stand at the dawn of your true existence, ready to wield the immovable authority of a soul that has finally come home to itself. This is your time, your territory, and your triumph, the glorious vindication of every moment you spent feeling misplaced, proving once and for all that you were never broken, you were just being forged into a masterpiece of psychological resilience. Subscribe not for motivation, not for hype, but for depth, orientation, and the psychology of becoming whole.